to another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. We've got a very, very special guest. If you're watching or listening, this is obviously a continuation from the first part of this series. But I'd like to take the moment to welcome Mr. Michael Benevente, Managing Director at Bulova.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming through.
Thanks to you all that you still care about watches in
Of course.
2024. So we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Allow us to introduce the team. My name is Perri.
I'm Rashawn.
And I'm Ben.
And we make up the Wrist Check Podcast. Now, before we get into things, we got a lot to talk about tonight. As is tradition, when the three amigos are united, we have to have an honorary wrist check. And Michael, I don't know if you know how many episodes you've seen or not, but we start with the man who never repeats a watch. That man happens to be wearing a new watch this evening. Rashawn, what do you got on the wrist?
Oh, this is a very, very special timepiece, as
Yeah.
they all are. Shout out to everybody that is in the crowd here. You guys know my love affection for timepieces and how very special they are to me. I am wearing the Bulova Surveyor.
It's a new release.
New release. One of the best-selling timepieces from Bulova with the pistachio dial. Found it to be very appropriate for what I'm wearing today. So here it is.
That's a good one. And that one has the precisionist movement inside. Is that
Nope,
correct?
this is an automatic.
This is an
has
automatic.
an
Yes.
automatic movement in it, but
Awesome.
it's a beauty and it's a great value. It's under $400, so really
It's amazing.
a great
It's a
way to get
beautiful
into
dial.
a really nice classic watch.
We were talking off camera, Michael, about just the.
Don't tell my secrets.
We'll keep a couple things on the wraps, but we were just talking about the design language of the timepiece and how it just hits all of the right angles and it's a very, very handsome watch. One that's had at a very approachable price point where people from all levels of collecting can enjoy these pieces. So I'm actually happy to be wearing this tonight. And
fit.
exactly. Always a method to my madness, so I had to rock this one.
Nice.
And your strap matches your shoes. I mean,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I'll kick it off next. I'm wearing a very special timepiece. I'm wearing the Bulova Mill Ships. So this piece is actually, if I'm correct, based off of a prototype
That's right.
that was brought back as sort of like an homage.
So originally the watch was designed in the mid to late 50s.
Right.
It was for what then was called the Frogmen, not even Navy SEALs, because it was before Navy SEAls. Bulova had a division of the company called Bulova Defense, and Bulova Defense worked with the U.S. military on a lot of different projects, and this was one of the projects. We never actually made the watch because it was a prototype. And many, many years later, we find out the whole story from a collector named Adam Victor. And Adam is, let's say, the godfather of this particular project because he brought the whole thing to life. He's actually owned 7 of about 11 of what we believe were the original prototypes that were made. And he actually lent us one of his new old stock that he had so that we could make that watch in the exact manner in which it was originally made.
Incredible. Incredible. Ben, what do you got on the wrist?
So I'm wearing 2 watches tonight. I'm gonna start off with something old, something cool, something borrowed from my good friend Scott. It's an original 1960 Bulova Accutron. So OG tuning fork movement, crowns on the back of the case, and it's in a solid white gold case with this like weird linen dial, TV shaped like cushion finish. It's really good. Also on an orange strap, which is a callback to actually the modern one that you guys make now.
Yeah, and that watch was also worn by Elvis. Elvis Presley had that original watch in the gold-plated version. We pretty much sure it was one of the first Accutron watches ever made, 1960. And so you're right there with Elvis.
Yeah. So this one's actually, the back of it's engraved LF. So shout out to LF wherever you are. And then on my other wrist, I'm rocking a Bulova Devil Diver, water resistant to 666 feet. Kind of obvious where the name came from.
That's right. That's
if you know me, also an obvious choice. So there's that.
Yeah, and a really great seller. I mean, we really do well with Oceanographer, and that's the best seller.
Yeah.
The orange style does really well.
Fine. Michael, what do you got on the wrist?
I have a brand new watch myself, which is just dropping as we speak, and this is our newest Marine Star.
Awesome.
A new body style. So for those of you who know Marine Star, we've had a couple of different body versions over the years. This is a new body type. And what's really fun about it is the first time we're using a precisionist movement in a Marine Star. So we're really excited about launching this. We have three different variants currently in it, and we're excited about building it out in the years to come.
Incredible. So we have the benefit of being in this amazing showroom this evening. As I understand, this place is recently just opened. In December. Can you talk a little bit about exactly where we are and how you guys arrived at this location?
So we are at the Citizen Group store. So all of the Citizen Group brands, for those of you who don't know, Bulova is owned by Citizen Watch Holdings of Japan. We were purchased, I guess it's about almost 15 years ago now. And this is really the first group store for us. So it's a great place to be. Citizen brand had a store in Times Square, which was closed about a year ago now, I think, almost. And so we were looking for a new address. We wanted to come as a group. The second floor has everything that's non-Citizen, let's call it, as a brand. So behind you is Accutron, Frederick Constant, Alpina. And so it's an exciting moment for our group as well, because it's the first time that we've all kind of been together under one roof.
Right. Incredible. So yesterday, when we were together, we talked a little bit about the history of the brand, the inception, the founding of it, all of the inventions, many of the contributions that you guys have made to horology. I want to spend this evening talking about where Bulova is currently. So in terms of brand positioning and what lies ahead for the future, where does Bulova currently sit in the marketplace?
Well, we sit in a place that says, or at least I've said for a while, no one needs a watch, right? So no one in this room really needs a watch. You've all chosen to wear many watches and collect many watches. And so for us, it's really about community. It's about telling our stories. And Bulova, we're 149 years old. I know I don't look that old. We're 149 years old. We're getting ready to really kick off in September. We're kicking off the beginning of our 150th anniversary.
Incredible.
And so
Congratulations.
with that comes a lot of fun and excitement coming. We have a lot of new drops coming starting end of this year to celebrate that 150th. And so our mission going forward is to definitely look forward and see how we can go, the next 100 years, from where we are today. We're a traditional watch company. We only make dumb watches, I like to say. We're not connected. We leave that for others. We're traditional, and it's very important for us also to be accessible, right? So we're an accessible watch brand. Anyone here in the room, if they choose to buy even, the most entry-level watch for Bulova, it's going to be cool and it's going to be a fun story to it.
Yeah. One of the things that we also talked about, which I thought was really important, and I don't know how many people actually know this, but Bulova was founded here in New York City.
Yep.
It's a New York City brand, built through and through here. How are you guys keeping that tradition alive as a New York-based watch company, especially now that you do produce watches in other places? What can you speak to that?
So on that point, we always produced watches in other places. So even as far back as 1875, when Jospeh Bulova, had this dream, and he was an immigrant. He came from what's now known as the Czech Republic. Came here as a young guy. He was like 17, 18 years old. But his genius was that even as early as the very early 1900s, we were already producing watches in Switzerland.
Right.
So we were producing watches in America, and we were producing watches in Switzerland as well. Today, we produce watches in Switzerland as well as in Japan. And so the story for us is always just evolution and continuing to go source watches where it makes the most sense. And for us, so we're not Swiss, so we don't say we're Swiss. We're not Japanese, so we don't say we're Japanese. We're based in New York. You've been to our office.
We were there yesterday, in the
You've
museum.
seen, I think you've maybe met Donnell, who's one of our designers. He's based right in the office there. All the watches are designed in New York City. Our team is all based in New York, and still for the last 149 years, that's the way it's been. So uninterrupted, which is a very important point for me to make. There's never been a break, right? So there are a lot of old brands, and all respect to them, but maybe there were 20 years, 30 years where they were out of business, and someone bought them and kind of resurrected them. I like to say every January 2nd, some poor soul has been opening the front door of the building for 149 years, and that's a pretty cool thing.
Has there ever been a moment where the two places, let's say Switzerland, Japan, or even America, where that ever was married? So let's say a case designed in Japan had a movement put in the front that was made in America, or vice versa?
Oh yeah, many times. I mean, especially in the, let's call it, from probably the 20s on, there were watches that were, let's say, partly being made in America, shipped to Switzerland in some cases. They were shipping movements over to the U.S. We were putting them in American cases. So there was a lot of that history. And today we still, I mean, there are watches that we have that are Swiss made. There are watches obviously that are Japan made. Your watch is a beautiful watch, Miyota movement, made in Japan. So we're trying to take the best of what's available and saying, this is what we have to offer.
Well, so what I wanted to ask as well is the word that continues to come up when I think about Bulova Accutron is community. And behind us, we have a few of your ads and the target communities that you speak to when you speak of equal pay, when you speak of the equality of women, when you speak of just different demographics where voices are suppressed or not as heard. You guys carry that with your campaigns, and then you also put it on the forefront when you create club watches. Shout out to Jason, who's in the crowd somewhere. Complecto. Yep. Shout out to Complecto, as well as Red Bar Group and so many other groups that are out there. Wrist Check Pod, of course. Community is something that's been in your vein. Can you speak to just like where that has come from?
I like to say we stand on the shoulders, right, of others that have come in the company. I think we are just, perpetuating what had been before us. I mean, we have a collection in the museum at the Empire State Building of ladies' watches that were really one of the first collections specifically made for women in 1912.
Wow.
I mean, this was not something that was normal at the time. Joseph Bulova was actually a jeweler before he got into the watch business. And so as a jeweler, I think in his mind, he was wired already thinking about ladies and women's collections.
That was his advantage.
Yeah. I think also because the company has been based always in New York, we're very inclusive from the standpoint of he was an immigrant.
Yeah.
He came from, what was then known as Bohemia. And so he was an outsider, right? And so he was always looking at the world from an outsider point of view and saying, how can I be inclusive of others as they come to this country. So it's a beautiful story, really, if you think about it. And quite unique in the watch industry, because you know the watch industry and you know other brands, and I've worked for other brands, and that's cool.
We won't name them.
And we let them do, right? We let them do. But I mean, this is the Bulova story.
Yeah. I want to, piggybacking off the point Rashawn made in terms of talking about community. One of the interesting things that Bulova does as part of just their brand initiative and the programming partnerships. And you guys have a group of like really, really unique partnerships. We have the partnership with Mark Anthony. There's with the Frank Sinatra estate, Frank Lloyd Wright, right? An amazing architect. And there was the Latin Grammys even. Can you take us sort of behind the mindset and the incentives or the mission behind you guys venturing out and getting these partnerships? Also, I do want to highlight the Frank Sinatra partnership a little bit too.
And I don't want to forget the Apollo Theater.
Oh, that's right. Yes, we have the Apollo Theater.
They're not far from us here.
Yeah.
But the Apollo Theater is also someone that we have a relationship with. So all of them, the most important thing when we look at any of these collaborations is authenticity. So we're not doing anything like, no disregard to Taylor Swift, but we won't be doing a Taylor Swift collaboration. Not because we don't like Taylor Swift, but it's just not about who we are, right? As a brand. And so, Frank Sinatra, we were the sponsor of the Frank Sinatra Hour in the late 50s and early 60s. It literally was Bulova presents the Frank Sinatra Hour.
Right.
And so Mr. Sinatra had various Bulova Accutron, and he was always wearing them and gifting them. So when we approached the family about 7 years ago now and said, hey, you know what, we'd really like to retell this story, they were like, you know what, we don't do a lot, but this is something that we can do because it's also authentic to us. So That's why the Frank Sinatra collection for us is special to us, and super important because we do very well with it. Mark Anthony, well, the Latino community for us is very important. We have generational experience there. Bulova, because we've been so long in the Americas, we've been trading in Central and South America and Mexico for so many years.
Right.
And that, so, there's generational knowledge about Bulova. And so Mark Anthony is just kind of amplifying a sound that's already understood, in those markets, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's also the Joseph Bulova collection that exists. What does this mean for the history of the brand and the company?
To me, very important because it's an homage to the founder of our brand. It's our Swiss-made brand, so all of those watches are Swiss-made. It's just really respect, paying respect to him, and we again stand on the shoulders of him and his son Artie, who built this amazing, company that had the longevity to last, 149 years.
149 years, crazy. So there's also, the history and sort of that bridge with Accutron. If we can get into that, because now we have the Accutron showroom side by side with Bulova. And, some people know the tethered history, others don't. But what's the connection there today?
Well, Bulova is father to Accutron's son. So Accutron doesn't exist without Bulova. Bulova created, the brand as a breakthrough in how we measure time. The way we measure time for 300 years had basically not changed, right? So we had the sundial, and then we had clocks that became pocket watches, and that was pretty much the way we measured time. Then we come up to 1960, and Bulova launches the Accutron brand, which was the first electric watch that was commercially viable and commercially made. There were some other brands that were also dabbling in that technology. Hamilton, I can mention, as one that had an electric watch, but they weren't able to make it on a commercial basis, on a regular basis that was accurate. So at that moment, Accutron becomes the most accurate watch in the world. That opens the door also for us to go on to 46 different missions into space, because again, we had a joint venture with the U.S. military and with NASA, and it was a super important, breakthrough in watchmaking. It lasted really about 10, 12 years, because then the onset of quartz, and really quartz doesn't happen without Accutron inventing, what would be an electronic watch. So,
and you guys are still innovating, right? Now we have like the precisionist movement. We even have like the first curved chronograph that you guys released. So it's very much still part of this DNA.
The electrostatic, which is right behind you.
The electrostatic, which is a new release from Accutron. Incredible. So what do we have to look forward in terms of innovation? Is there anything that's happening behind the scenes that you can tell us about, things that you guys are working on?
There's a really fun project that we're working on in Accutron. I'll say it this way because I can't say all of it, but we're looking back, but also looking forward. And so next year in 2025, we'll make an announcement of a new.
So this is a 150th celebration, kind of like piece.
Also, so in the 60s, the Accutron was kind of your leap into the future and for watchmaking.
Right.
So would you compare that to the precisionist movement today?
Well, it definitely is a relative. The precisionist movement is definitely a relative of the original tuning fork movement in terms that, we have that smooth sweeping second hand. It's electronic in terms of, it's a quartz watch.
How many changes had to be made to actually get that precisionist to exist?
Well, the precisionist is really still, in its heart, it's a quartz, right? So it's a high precision quartz. So the relationship is really in that we were able to get that sweeping second hand.
Yeah, it keeps the romance there.
And it's plus or minus 10 seconds a year. So it's super, it's more accurate than the original.
Right. What is it, do you think, that people should know about Bulova today that maybe they don't know? Maybe something that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, I think what people should know is the history. I think, over the years, we've always been known for value. We make really great valued watches, but That's only half the story.
Right.
I mean, I think all the things that you were asking me about, all those stories, are really the bones of the company. That we had the first. I was telling someone before, we had the first commercial ever made. Not the first TV commercial. The first commercial ever made was a Bulova commercial in 1941 during a baseball game. Brooklyn Dodgers. Sorry. Brooklyn Dodgers versus Philadelphia Phillies, and it cost $9 back then, so it was a bargain. But that was the first television commercial ever.
Yeah, I mean, this revolutionized the way that we sell products today.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that we're an American New York brand. I mean, I think a lot of people, because we make Swiss watches for many years and still do, and because we now are owned by Citizen and we have Miyota movements, that's all great. But we're still a New York, USA brand, and unfortunately, watches are not made in the United States really on a commercial basis right now, but who knows, maybe that one day that will change as well. And if that happens, we'll be there too.
It's funny because Ben dove a bit into the future, and I want to dive a little bit into my past, and we spoke about it, right? The first mechanical watch that I actually owned was a Bulova timepiece. And I was talking to a couple of our guests in the crowd, and they were saying as well that their first timepiece, like a mechanical timepiece, was a Bulova. And when you talk about the availability as far as commercial timepieces, I think that's a market that you guys have been able to dominate. When you talk about so many of the sub-brands and subcategories and options that you offer to the public, you guys don't hold back. You don't withhold. Everything that you guys introduce, it is readily available for the clients to be able to enjoy and indulge in. I kind of wanted to give you your flowers in doing that, because it's very important. We look at so many timepieces that other brands produce, and you can't get them. You can't get them. And when you look at a brand like Bulova Accutron, you guys are able to offer so many SKUs to people that may either A, just be getting into timepieces, or B, just want, that heavy hitting piece. So it's actually amazing.
Thank you. We try to be very democratic. I mean, that's really, we try to have a democratic approach, to watchmaking. We try to have different price points. We stay in our, we try to stay in our lane, as much as possible. You're not going to see us with a $50,000 watch. That's not what we do. We leave that to others. But we also want to make watches that are interesting and that have stories to tell and that can make people proud,
Right. I mean, it's such an interesting brand, from that perspective too, right? Like, you get so much. There's so much history. There's the connection with New York. And now we have the showroom here. What should people expect to experience when they visit the Bulova showroom?
You're going to have variety, certainly. You're going to have the newest here. So I think what's cool about, coming to the store is that whenever there's a new release, for sure, you should expect to be able to find it here first. As much as we're very much tied to the, brick and mortar AD. They're very important for us. And so it's the store and our special ADs that get those first releases. I think you have a really great team here. They're new, but they're very enthusiastic. So I think you'll get a good team of people here that are going to be very excited, to serve you.
I got one last question for you before we wrap.
This is usually the gotcha question.
Yeah. I think I hit you earlier.
I was just going to say,
there might be more coming.
You've been with the company 149 years now.
It feels that way sometimes.
What is it that, what has Bulova done for you personally? What do you love most about your experience with the company?
Great question. I'm an immigrant story myself. I'm a first generation guy. My parents were both from Peru. So I appreciate the immigrant story myself and have lived it in a way. And so I think what it's made me do in a crazy way is really appreciate, that energy, and I think it's been able to, and I think we have several people in our company that are the same. And so we continue to tell that story, and it's been nice to be able to do that.
That's awesome. I want to say thank you for having us here with you tonight. I want to give a big shout out to Bulova, the Bulova team. Shout out to TJ, Caitlin. I want to give a big shout out to Accutron, the Accutron team. And for all of those watching and listening, you guys know where to find us. YouTube, Wrist Check Pod. Instagram at Wrist Check Pod. Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
Not the metaverse.
And maybe in the metaverse.
This has been another episode of Wrist Check Podcast. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
It's been a lot of fun. Listen. We've got beverages, we've got food. Most importantly, we've got watches. The Bulova team here is amazing. And if there's anything that you want to see, please pull them aside. They're pulling out watches. They're showing watches. If anyone wants to talk to us, we'll be here all night. And see you next week.